In the cold, unforgiving lands of the north, where the wind howled through towering fjords and the sea stretched endlessly into the unknown, the Vikings forged their legacy. Life was harsh, demanding strength, resilience, and an unshakable will. A boy born into this world was not merely raised, he was tested, shaped, and hardened into a man who could stand tall among warriors, protect his kin, and carve his own path through fate. From the moment he could walk, he was taught the ways of his ancestors. He learned to wield a blade, not just with brute force, but with precision and wisdom. He learned to endure hunger, cold, and hardship without complaint. He listened to the sagas of great men, understanding that his name too would one day be spoken in the halls of his descendants, if he proved himself worthy. Every morning he rose with the sun, his hands calloused from training, his body sore from the trials of the previous day. Yet he did not complain. He understood that a Viking man did not seek comfort. He sought challenge, for only through struggle could he grow stronger. His father's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him that strength was not given but earned. Honor was his shield, his word was his bond. He knew that a man who broke an oath was no better than a coward, and a coward had no place among his people. He learned to fight, not for senseless violence, but to defend his home, his brothers, and the sacred land of his ancestors. He understood that fear was an enemy more dangerous than any blade, and he faced it not with hesitation, but with courage. The sea called to him, vast and unpredictable. He studied the stars, learning to navigate the endless waters. He embraced the unknown, knowing that only those willing to take risks could ever hope to achieve greatness. He watched the elders speak, their voices carrying wisdom gathered over a lifetime of battle and survival. He listened, for he knew that the wise man spoke less and learned more. Through blood, sweat, and fire, he transformed. He became more than a boy. He became a Viking, bound by the ancient lessons of his people. He stood not just as a warrior, but as a man of honor, strength, and wisdom. He was ready to carve his own legend, to write his name in the annals of time. And when the day came for him to step forward, to take his place among the warriors, he did not hesitate, for he knew this was what he had been prepared for. This was what it meant to be a man. The boy's trials were far from over. Becoming a man in the Viking world was not a single moment, but a series of relentless challenges, each designed to test his body, mind, and spirit. Strength alone was not enough. Wisdom, patience, and honor were just as crucial. His father led him deep into the forest, where the shadows stretched long and the air smelled of damp earth and pine. Here he was handed a blade, not for battle, but for survival. For the first time, he would be left alone, far from the comforts of home, with only his skills and instincts to guide him. He would have to build his own shelter, hunt his own food, and prove that he could survive in the wild as his ancestors had before him. The first night was the hardest. The cold bit at his skin, and hunger gnawed at his stomach. He had seen warriors feast at great halls, drinking and laughing in the firelight. But he now understood that such rewards had to be earned. He crafted a crude shelter from branches and moss, his fingers stiff from the icy wind. He listened to the forest, every rustle, every howl in the distance, and he understood that he was not alone. Wolves prowled in the darkness, watching, waiting. Fear threatened to creep in, but he swallowed it. A Viking did not fear the night. He sharpened his blade, knowing that if he was to live, he must be ready to fight, not just against the beasts of the forest, but against the weakness inside himself. Days passed and his body grew leaner, his senses sharper. He learned the patience of the hunter, waiting silently for the perfect moment to strike. He tracked deer through the frost-covered ground, reading the signs of the wild as his father had taught him. When he finally made his first kill, he did not celebrate. He simply gave thanks, understanding that survival was not about triumph, but necessity. When his father returned, he found a different boy than the one he had left behind. The boy no longer shivered from the cold. His eyes were steady, his movements sure. He had proven himself in the wild, but his trials were far from over. The next test would not be against the elements. It would be against men. The time had come for him to take up arms, to step into the shield wall and to fight as his ancestors had before him. He was no longer a child, but to be called a man, he would have to earn his place in blood and steel. The day of reckoning arrived with the morning mist, thick and heavy over the training grounds. The boy, now hardened by the trials of survival, stood alongside others who had reached the same stage. They were no longer mere children, but not yet men. That title had to be earned with sweat, pain, and battle. His father placed a firm hand on his shoulder, looking into his eyes with the quiet strength of a warrior who had seen countless fights. "Today you learn what it means to stand among your brothers," he said. "A man is not measured by his strength alone, but by his courage, his discipline, and his will to stand even when the world pushes him to his knees." The boy tightened his grip around the wooden training sword in his hands. He had seen the warriors of his village spar, their movements quick and deliberate, their strikes heavy and precise. Now it was his turn to step into the ring. His first opponent was another boy, slightly older, his stance firm. The moment their eyes met, there was no hesitation. A Viking did not hesitate. The clash of wood echoed through the air as they exchanged blows. Each strike sent a jolt of pain through his arms, but he gritted his teeth and pressed forward. He had hunted, endured the cold, and survived the wild. He would not falter now, but his opponent was skilled, knocking him back with a well-placed strike to the ribs. The pain burned, but he refused to fall. Again and again, he rose. He absorbed every lesson in real time, adjusting his footing, learning to anticipate attacks, to read his opponent's movements. By the time the match ended, he was bruised, exhausted, but standing. And that, his father told him, was what mattered most. But training with wooden swords was only the beginning. The real test lay ahead, the shield wall. That night, as the fire crackled in the great hall, he listened to the older warriors speak of battle. They did not glorify it as songs did. They spoke of its harshness, the weight of an enemy's blade against their shields, the sound of war cries over the din of combat. "A man is not just a warrior," one of them said. "A man knows when to fight, when to defend, and when to show mercy." He absorbed their words, understanding that becoming a Viking warrior was not just about wielding a weapon, it was about wielding responsibility. He was not just fighting for himself, he was fighting for his kin, his land, his honor. As he lay beneath the vast northern sky that night, the stars above burning bright, he knew he was one step closer. But the greatest test still awaited him. Soon he would stand in the shield wall, where only the strong, the disciplined, and the fearless survived. The shield wall, a trial of blood and brotherhood. The morning air was sharp with the bite of the northern wind, carrying the scent of damp earth and steel. Today was the day. The boy, no, the young warrior, would face his most grueling test yet. Training blades had been put aside. The shield wall was no mere exercise, it was a test of will, endurance, and the ability to trust those who stood beside him. His father stood at the front, his battle-worn shield slung over his arm, eyes scanning the gathered young warriors. "Strength alone will not save you," he said, his voice like thunder over the restless whispers of the boys. "A lone warrior dies quickly. A shield wall is an unbreakable force. You will stand together, or you will fall alone." The young warrior took his place, gripping the wooden handle of his shield, its surface rough beneath his fingers. To his left and right, his brothers in arms locked their shields together, forming a barrier of wood and iron. Across from them, seasoned warriors stood ready to test their formation, real steel in their hands, their expressions unreadable. The command was given. The veterans charged. The impact was like a tidal wave crashing against stone. His body jolted as the force of the charge drove against his shield, the weight of it threatening to break his stance. He gritted his teeth and dug his heels into the frozen earth. Around him, the young warriors trembled, some stumbling, some holding firm. The veterans did not hold back. They struck with the flat of their blades, testing the wall, looking for weakness. The young warrior clenched his jaw, pressing his shield tighter against his side, protecting his brother to the left just as his right was protected. That was the lesson. The shield wall was only as strong as the men who stood in it. To falter was to invite death. Blades slammed against wood, shields rattled, and grunts of effort filled the air. Then came the next test, the counterstrike. The order rang out, and as one, the young warriors surged forward, pressing back against their attackers. He thrust his own weapon through the gaps in the wall, feeling the satisfying clash as it struck a shield. For what felt like an eternity, they fought. His muscles burned, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he did not falter. He could not. Sweat dripped from his brow, mixing with the dust and grit of the battlefield. The veterans did not go easy on them, but neither did they break them. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The veterans stepped back, their expressions now laced with something resembling approval. The boy, no, the warrior, was still standing. His father approached, studying him for a long moment before nodding. "You did not break," he said. "You stood. You fought. You are learning what it means to be a man of the North." The words settled deep in his chest, a fire burning within. He was one step closer, one step toward proving himself not just to his people, but to himself. But his journey was not yet complete. For a Viking, the true test was still to come, a battle that was no longer a lesson, but a matter of life and death. And soon he would face it,